Hi, welcome back to the channel. My name is Michelle and this is my dog Feeny. Together we moved into our 4x9 Teardrop camper for this summer. Well, that summer is over and we are now back in our home state of Arizona where we are failing to acclimatize to normal life with grace. So we hit the road to spend a week in beautiful Flagstaff, Arizona. In this video, we are answering all of your questions from this summer: how we lived, how we worked, what would we change, and so much more. Alrighty, let's settle in to this recap. Got some beverages. Fiends has stuffs. I'm a beverage goblin, so I have to have multiples, but A&W root beer, 0 sugar, so good. But this is a little bit different of a setup. I do have my laptop because I have the questions on here. One downside about solo filming and solo travel is you can kind of repeat things over and over and you have nobody to shut you up and nobody to like bounce things off of and tell you that you repeated things. Kind of like my Creed video where I think I said it was the UV like 22 times and the UV is like 10 today. So Colorado's UV being so high, UV factor is, I think it's the UV. Anyhow, in my defense, I was sick, but alas, I hope the laptop kind of helps me keep this organized and succinct. Doesn't help me with my vocabulary. Succinct, and I'm going to be smart and mute my sound here. But what I have done is I have organized these questions into 2 main categories. And I'm starting with technical because that seemed to be where most of the comments or questions I got over the last couple of months kind of centered around. And the very first under technical is internet and how I worked full time. So to give you background in how I use the internet, because I think that really matters, I am a full-time employee. I work 8 to 5, as we all say, but sometimes it's 7 to 7. And I have to be hooked to Microsoft 365 all day long. I keep nothing on my laptop. Everything is backed up. I'm on Teams, I'm on Zoom, I'm hosting calls, I'm running, facilitations where there's 25, 30 people in the room, cameras are on. So I need a pretty robust internet. And that was always my number one fear. Like when I hit the road, I'm like, oh my gosh, what works? And that's where my shakeout runs came in. So previous to leaving, there were a few videos, Tucson and Lake Pleasant, where I did some shakeout runs and really tested the different internet. And this is what I ended up bringing with me. I ended up bringing my T-Mobile home internet. I think this is more likely to work in the West Coast, and that's one of my tips, is to pay attention to the mobile coverage maps. Like go look at them for the different carriers and really pay attention to where you're gonna be. I also looked at the T-Mobile home internet coverage map just to make sure I was gonna be in places that had T-Mobile home internet, because then I'm most likely to get coverage. I also had AT&T hotspot on my cell phone, and this has always been my tether, always been my backup for working remote. I've worked remote for 6 years. My entire company's remote. So I've been doing the internet thing for a while at home. So the AT&T hotspot has always been my backup and hasn't generally failed me. It might just be a little slower than my home internet. And then what I also had with me, and I can't show because spoiler alert, I sold, but I'll put like a little screenshot here, is a Peplink mobile router and then a Parsec Akita Lite antenna. Now, I don't think I understood the full setup, and I don't think the person at Mobile Must Haves who helped me understood my rig and how tiny it is. And I didn't know the questions to ask. So when I got it, here it's all hardwired. Everything has to be hardwired unless I buy an additional Wi-Fi component to it. And then I'm stuck with an antenna, a router, a Wi-Fi, and I'm trying to find a place to put it. I have to take it down and plug it in and unplug it every day. And it was just a lot. I think I tested it out once or twice, and then I was like, oh my gosh, this is obnoxious. And it was an AT&T SIM card, and it was quite a bit slower speeds than my T-Mobile home internet and my T-Mobile hotspot. So I was like, this is useless anyways. So I ended up only 30 days in canceling the monthly data plan on the SIM card, and kind of had a backup of like, well, if I have to go get an actual AT&T hotspot and not just my cell phone, I can do that. But I didn't want to pay the $130 a month for the data that I wasn't going to use. So I solely used my T-Mobile home internet. Now I want to put a caveat out there. I do not think that this is a long-term solution. T-Mobile will figure out how to throttle you into a certain area at some point. At least I'm going to assume so. So it's kind of to me, like I'm gonna use it till I can't, and I'm gonna test out some other things while I can. So that's where hotspots, I think, really come into play. And I think if it were me, I would pay attention to different hotspots, different data plans for hotspots. Like my parents use the actual T-Mobile hotspot, and they have really loved that. So I will keep my eye on those kinds of things, but I'm going to use my T-Mobile home internet till I absolutely can't. So obviously I gave you a spoiler alert, and I got rid of the router and the antenna, and I'm going to keep the hotspot on my phone and the T-Mobile for any future trips. What will I add? Most likely I will add Starlink. So it wasn't originally on my radar because when it first came out, the latency and the throttling was really bad, and the power usage for off-grid for me is just super high for needing to be connected to the internet for 8 to 10 hours a day. So it didn't really work for me, but I think Elon has done a good job of getting more satellites in the air. And I talked to quite a few people who were using Starlink, and they weren't having any problems. So I think maybe just with age, some of the things have gotten better. So basically, I'm gonna keep everything the same, and I will throw in Starlink when I wanna do a little bit more off the grid stuff, just so that I have that. Although I'm in the middle of nowhere right now, my T-Mobile internet is doing just great. But I am gonna take uno momento, and I'm gonna move my solar panel. So I'm charging my generator. 1 second. I'm off grid this week, so playing the game of move the solar panel around. And in all honesty, I'm not really set up for full-time solar, so we're not really gonna talk about that. If you watched my very first video, you will know my first week of off-grid did not go well. And I kind of knew it. I played a little bit of a risky game and had the freezer running for Feeney's food, and I was only getting about 40 hours off the house battery, where I'm 5 days in and we're still running strong now without the freezer on. So I'm not gonna really talk solar because I kind of use a haphazard. I have a grow watt generator, 1 solar panel that I use for work, and then I keep a Big Daddy grow watt 1200 that recharges the house battery 1 full time, and then we're done. So I'm not sophisticated. Do I want to be there? Eventually, but we're gonna talk about that. Spoiler alert. So let's get back to working from the road. How I actually worked from the road and any kind of challenges I faced was another big question. And I get that because I'm literally working outside, so things happen. I found that keeping as close to my normal schedule, because I have to be online during certain times, and I have to, I have client meetings and deadlines and things to do. I kept my morning routine and my evening routine as close to home as possible. We just had better adventures on them. Our walks were prettier, our evening adventures were cooler, but my work day was pretty much the same. In fact, I rolled out the largest project of my career while I was on the road, so I was highly productive. But I definitely found, for me, keeping a very consistent daily routine not only is a must for my career, but I also think it just is a must to stay incredibly productive and focused if that's your working method and style at home. Don't go chase the cows. We're on free range land, and we have cows, and Fiends is a herding dog, so he keeps wanting to chase the cows. The biggest downside working for me was weather. Obviously, I am working in an outdoor tent, and how I typically work is just like this all day. Zoom and Teams have such good noise deafening, y'all, that like I don't even really have to wear headphones. Like, I tested it with one of my coworkers because they do know what I'm doing. Dells, they're power hogs, man. And they could never hear anything. So I often didn't wear headphones unless I was at like a campground or other people could hear me. But I typically work out here. Inclement weather, big meetings, windy days, I move into the drop. I just put on a Zoom background and we call it a day. You do have to make sure the sun's kind of in front of your face. Otherwise it kind of shines weird. And like I said, if it's really windy, you go inside. Otherwise your hair is like this and people can absolutely tell. But I really had no problems on the day-to-day, and the minor problems I had, I don't think they equate to any more distraction than if I were home. You know, if I'm home, things break. Construction workers have to come. Landscaper comes. Internet goes out. Internet slows down. Power goes out. You know, you have those things at home. And I would say, if anything, I had less on the road. You know, I really only remember 2 days that I was super distracted because we had a big storm and then we had like really big hail that came through. But other than that, even on rainy days, you'll see I have the poles up here and I kind of talked about that. The rain just falls off. So Fiends and I just get cozy in the camper and we have a good day. So for me, I really worked no differently than if I was moving around my house at home. You know, if I'm sitting on my couch during meeting, I have a background on because they don't need to see that. So it really was no different. And I think working from home for 6 years already kind of conditioned me, and I actually am a better worker, better remote worker than I am an in-person than I am an in-person, because I tend to be the person that fixes everything. So like I actually, if I work in an office, I'm the one like fixing the coffee pot, fixing the printer, fixing everything, because that's just like kind of my personality. So I actually get a lot more work done at home, and I found that working on the road actually wasn't hard at all. Good Lord. Maybe I need to add some alcohol to this. As I thought it would be. So, okay. There we go. That is working from the road, internet options, and just kind of how I worked. If you have any more questions on that, please pop them below. And we are going to move on to the next one. Our next one is for towing and towables. So the never-ending, do you get a drive unit or towable question? So let's start with towing, and we're going to discuss the towing setup. So what things changed? I tow a 4x9 TC Teardrop that is 850 pounds dry. She's probably about 1,200 pounds fully loaded, so I'm at my 80% tow capacity of 1,500 because I tow with a 2022 Subaru Crosstrek. So what did I change? I added a red arc brake controller system, and then I added an external transmission cooler, and I think that was the game changer. The trailer brakes are mandatory for my car, but the transmission cooler was optional, and I honestly think with as many mountain passes as I climbed, it was necessary. Phoenix, no. Sir, seats. Platz. Platz. Oh, these cows getting close. 1 second. Get the long line because these cows are being difficult. And I don't want you guys to keep being ignored when I walk away. So how did my Crosstrek tow the TC Teardrop through all the mountain passes of southern Colorado? Excellently. We did some intense passes, and I will tell you, I was non-stop proud of this baby girl. She did the San Juan Scenic Byway. She did the 550 from Durango to Silverton. We went across the pass to Delta, then back down through Moab, and it handled beautifully. I wasn't going slower than anybody else going up the passes. I kept good gas mileage, probably around like the high 20s, while towing, which is amazing. And overall, I was incredibly impressed. However, there are downsides, and I don't want to gloss over those. You always have to think. And I think that to an extent, whatever you tow, you kind of have to know your route, plan your route. But I do think I thought a lot more. I took a lot more breaks, letting things cool down, letting the brakes take a break. I took longer routes because I didn't want to risk literally having to go 17 miles an hour up a steep, one lane pass and having everybody hate me. I just felt like I had to think a lot more. When I was going through a lot of hot places, I couldn't have the AC on and tow up mountain, or I would completely lose power. So then, Fiends and I are sweating because we have the windows rolled down. Luckily, that wasn't too often, but it was enough. And I live in Arizona, so when we came home, I'm towing through 100-degree weather. I'm having to take breaks, turn the AC off because I'm losing a little bit of power. And just always having that thought of like possible overheating or just, power loss to the fact where you're just super slow. So you do have to think about it, I think, a little bit more than if I was well under that 80% tow capacity. Obviously, when I'm just camping like now, very different story. I'm much, much lighter, and I didn't feel the impact coming out of, the 110-degree valley of Phoenix, because you have to climb out. I just didn't feel it. So you do have to think about it. And am I going to upgrade my tow vehicle? Probably. Yes. But there's more of a story to that than just that. But I think even if there weren't more of a story, I would still be upgrading to just have more storage room that's like full-time and not in my car, and then just to not have to worry about it, to have that percentage be a little bit greater or less, so that I'm just not as worried about it. Because it's not me, y'all, it's Feeney. I don't want Feeney, I never want to put him in danger, and if we're driving into someplace really hot and we break down, I'm putting him in danger, and I just don't want to do that. So what would I do differently? Well, I would never back in exhausted because I dented my camper, or my car, sorry, not my camper, my car. It was after my first big mountain pass day. It ended up being about an 8-hour unexpected hole, and I was exhausted, and it was a very challenging space. And I had to come in on my bad side. And anybody who backs in a camper knows you have one side that you can like nail every time, and you have another side that stresses you out and is bad. And I had to pull into with a trash can and poles and all of that fun stuff and people watching. So, but I definitely learned to just drive away, take a breather. I should have maybe taken Fiends for a walk or something. But honestly, that was like my biggest lesson from the road. Prior to this, I towed a lot to practice, and I think I talked about that in some videos. And all I can tell you is it just gets better the longer you do it. It was a little intimidating to me at first, but I just felt more and more comfortable, and now I'm nervous for like the first couple minutes, just making sure I hooked up everything properly. But after that, the way the TC pulls and the way the Crosstrek handles it is just perfection. And so honestly, towing has been like the easiest part, and I definitely thought it was going to be the hardest part. So there you go. That is what I learned about towing. All right, now, towable or drive unit? That is the question. So why I went with a towable Teardrop, and why I'm still team towable, is I personally love having a base camp and then taking my car and going exploring. If I wanted to go to the grocery store, if I want to get Fiends ice cream, if I want to drive into town, I don't have to pack up my home, pack up my belongings, and move. And for my lifestyle, where I work full time, I like to have more of a base camp and a setup, and then be able to use my car as I would at home. It definitely expanded the adventures. If I had a drive unit or a van, I'd feel like I probably would have worked during the day and then just stayed where I was, where, you know, which obviously beautiful every place I was and a lot to do, but having the car allowed me to go, you know, a little further than just walking or running could. So I am still very much team towable. I think having a drive unit would be amazing for like being able to move around a lot. And if my lifestyle ever allowed for that, it's definitely something I would look into, because I do think the flexibility of like pulling on the side of the road and being able to sleep and cook in your home is like awesome. Now on drive days, heck yeah, I love having my kitchen, and I totally stop and make coffee and have lunch and take naps even. But there's a big difference to having like a van or something where you can stealth camp. You definitely can't stealth camp in a teardrop. Wouldn't work. So there's pros and cons to both, but I think matching your lifestyle and matching how you want to exist in the world while on the road is really important. And for me, towables just allow me to set it up and then go off and explore. I even had some times where I left it for, you know, 1 or 2 nights and was able to go for like a longer distance explore, like a 4 or 5 hour day away. And for me, that was perfect. And I would just recommend, if you are still trying to figure out between drive unit and towable, just picture how you want to live and exist in your world and then pick what fits. And if you're afraid of the towing, listen to above, watch my like first couple videos. And really towing is a lot less scary than you think it is, and you can do it, I promise, if that's what's holding you down. But yeah, for me, I absolutely loved having a towable, and I think I will stay team towable for as long as I have like a corporate job on the road. Wow, for having notes, I'm doing great at speech. All right, so let's go into some pros and cons of living in a teardrop itself. So, pros, minimalist. I felt like I had so much less stress because I had less stuff. It's easy to clean. I got into the habit of like a 10-minute reset after work where I did all the dishes and I wiped everything down. And I feel like that maintained me, except for like once a month, I'd have to take everything out of the galley and wipe it down. So easy to clean, easy to maintain. There's not much that can break, you know, especially on a newer teardrop. The doors are what, the locks are what broke on me, but not the end of the world. There's dual locks on these, just the deadbolt broke. So I was still able to lock the door, but for travel days, I had to tape the door. And that's something that I could have fixed on the road. I just chose not to because it was close to me heading home anyways. So they're very easy to maintain. For somebody like me who cannot fix things, bonus. And that kind of goes with easy to operate. Like, there's just not much to them. Like, you pull in and you set up your tent if you have one, and you're done. Like, that's it. I have a house battery, so like that had to be wired in, but now there's like zero maintenance. I just charge it and we're done. There's no water tanks to deal with. There's none of that. There's no septic, nothing like that. I do think having a teardrop is a pretty financially accessible option for a camper. A lot of people can fit them in their garage, so you're not paying storage fees. You can find pretty good deals on them. For me, I did have to pay a little bit more to be as light as I am, but overall pretty financially accessible. If you're using this for camping, you feel a lot safer being able to lock doors and be in a hard side. And so like, honestly, I have the best sleep of my life. So again, it just, you know, if you're using it for camping and if you're an avid camper, like it is definitely a way to be more comfortable and feel safer. And of course, she's just so cute. I mean, she's just adorable. The looks I get are epic. All right, so the cons. This is still camping. So for me, you know, 3 months on the road, great. It was fine. Like, you can deal with your feet always being dirty. You can deal with the rain. You can deal with the wet. You can deal with the cold. You can deal with the heat. But it is still camping, and it is challenging. It has its moments. So full-time, I don't personally think I could do something like this. I think it would start impacting my work. It would start impacting Feenie and I's quality of life. So just keeping that in mind. Short term though, great, easy. I was able to follow the weather and it was great. Managing the toilet and water and compost. Yes, we do not have tanks, but you do have a composting toilet that you have to worry about your bag of waste and where to dump your urine, and it's a little gross. Like, you know, when the bags are full, it's a little gross to manage it. But it's part of having something that doesn't have, you know, onboard tanks and onboard bathrooms. For showers, you know, you shower outside or you go purchase a shower, which is mainly what I did at campgrounds, because if I wasn't staying in a campground that I could have one, I would just go to a campground and purchase one, because having a shower outside when the high is 65 is miserable, especially with this much hair. It's miserable. So it was definitely, sorry, there's a really slow car. I'm off of a dirt road, if you wondered. But yeah, managing the toilet and the water and the compost, it's a little challenging. It definitely is. Some states allow you to dump your bag, like your compost bag, anywhere. Other states make you take them to places. The urine, I have a couple canisters, so I typically would take it to just an RV dump and dump it there. Kind of just depended on where I was. So you do kind of have to constantly think about that. Think about where you're going to shower. Think about, you know, when your toilet's full. Think about where you need to take it. Pay attention. It is something you learn quickly and easily, but it is something you learn. Trash is another challenge on the road. Luckily, I stayed in Silverton for over 35 days and they have dumpsters everywhere, so that was really easy. But here, like, I have to drive my trash places. Luckily, I know Flagstaff really well, so I know where to go. But if you're someplace else and you don't know, it can be challenging. So lesson, use little bags, because then you can just throw them away at like gas stations and stuff, where like big trash bags, really hard to manage. So there's my little tip. And yeah, weather, the last con is weather's your constant friend or your enemy, and that's wind. I've never paid attention to the wind so much in my life. So whether it's the wind, whether it's rain, whether it's heat, whether it's not having enough sun for solar, you are constantly thinking about the weather when you don't have an enclosed place to live. And that equals for my dog, because obviously I want Phoenix to be happy and comfortable. And if it's raining and hot, or raining and cold, or really hot, like, I'm mitigating all of that during the day. I got really lucky on this trip, and I knew the weather of all of the places that I was going because I've been there. So I was really able to move around and keep us super comfortable and happy. But there were still rainy days that, you know, Fiends and I were just cuddled up in the camper all day. So that's definitely a con. But again, part of the lifestyle. It's also a beautiful pro when you're working and looking at a mountain like I am right now. Come here, boo. Come here. Stuffs is returned. Another thing that I got asked a lot about, more of the technical piece, was locations. How did I find locations, and what was kind of my overall take on the locations that I had? What do I think was like the surprising thing? So how did I find locations? I actually did all of my prep and booking prior to leaving, and I did screw up a little bit. So let me explain why. So I use a variety of research methods: HipCamp, Airbnb, Camp NDM, good old Google Maps, RV Life, and then I knew a lot of the areas that I was going to, so places that I had already scoped out. I quickly realized BLM wasn't gonna work. So luckily I'd only had 1 week off grid. But the second place that I booked was off of HipCamp, and it was completely unusable. So picture this, like, very first thing, I get to Colorado and it's a completely unusable. It was completely overgrown. It was right off of the edge of a road, and it was overgrown with foxtail, which is dangerous to dogs, like knee high. Like there wasn't even anywhere I could put the camper. And so it's Memorial Day weekend. I'm in a bind. Luckily I found another hip camp around the corner that I just took for 2 nights just to kind of like reconfigure my trip. I ended up getting a campground, which wasn't on my radar, but I ended up loving it. And here's why. It was a small family-run campground on the Gunnison River in Delta. And that was when that large program was kicking off, and I really did need 2 weeks to just focus. And after a week of chasing power and just feeling very discombobulated, I just wanted like a home. I had showers, I had laundry, I had safety, I had power, I had, you know, a bathroom if I didn't want to use my composting toilet. And it really did allow me the ability to focus on work, but also do that in a beautiful area. So campgrounds were definitely something that I didn't think I would love as much as I do. With that said, I think there's a caveat. I really like the small ones that are more family owned, that, you know, aren't as fancy and bougie as some of like the big ones, but that allows you like a little more privacy. This one happened to be right on the Gunnison River, had its own private trail system. I used it as a base camp to get to go to Aspen, which I've never done. So campgrounds definitely surprised me in how much I do enjoy them. After about 2 weeks, I'm ready for my privacy. But I think if I do something longer term, going to a campground like for 2 weeks, every other month or once a month or for a couple days, to just do all of the things and just, you know, get all of the things done is just such a benefit. Like everything was clean. I was clean all the time and it was great. So campgrounds definitely surprised me how much I liked them. Hip camps were my other go-to, and if you don't know what hip camps are, it's like an Airbnb but for people's land. So they will rent out land. It can be near their house, it can be private land, it can have hookups, it can not have hookups, it can be in the middle of nowhere. And I got really lucky with my hip camps. I did a hip camp in Mancos that was up on a hill. It was super private, but yet having a really small rig feels slightly dangerous sometimes because like people could just pick it up. Yes, there's locks on it, but let's be real, people can cut locks off. And it's so tiny, it can literally be, you know, towed by anything. So it's a little disconcerting to leave your home in the middle of nowhere. So I really liked hip camps because like their house may have been an acre away, but I was on their property and I just felt a little bit safer. Now my hip camp in Silverton, if you've ever been to Silverton, Silverton's real tiny. You don't camp in Silverton proper for stunning campsites, but I got really lucky. I was right next to somebody's cabin that they were actually renovating, so they weren't ever in there, and I was tucked in the aspens with a view of Kendall. It was perfect for me. There was a beautiful wind break because wind is like I said, your weather is your constant friend or enemy, and wind can be like one of the most challenging things for me. So I had a wind break and I could walk to town, and it was my favorite spot, but definitely not something I would have ever pegged being next to somebody's house as wanting. So the other side with locations and why I think there's a difference between what I always envisioned of like pure BLM and what I ended up really liking is I am not a person who gets lonely. I'm a INFJ, very introverted, require a lot of downtime. But there's something about being on BLM land full time and like living where like I'm not going to see a single soul for 7 days. Like I'm not going to talk to another human other than through work for 7 to 8 days this week. That's great. That amount of time is perfect. Longer than that, I think I would start to feel a little weird and feel a little too disconnected from the world. And for me, part of moving into the camper and being on the road was to find a community, create a community, and I was able to do that through campgrounds and hip camps. I met friends, I went to wine nights, I shared dinner with people. We had bonfires with people. Like, I was able to meet some of the coolest people who have some of the core values that I do, and the like thirst for adventure, because I stayed in some campgrounds and stayed connected to people. And that, for me personally, was what I really wanted from life on the road, and I got that through shifting the locations that I stayed. BLM is amazing. Fiends can be off leash. He can have, we can, like, in the mornings we go for a run and I don't even pick up the leash, and it's great. And I think, again, a mix. You mix the campgrounds, you mix the hip camps, you mix the BLM, and that's like perfect. And that definitely wasn't what I always thought. I thought I was going to be like BLM or bust. But there's definitely pros and cons to both sides. And just like with everything in life, just a little bit of mixing and matching and variety. It is the spice of life. So I prepared dinner. I thought it would be good to go into the mental and emotional. That's actually a question that I got asked quite a bit, of how I was dealing with the loneliness or how it impacted my day-to-day. And honestly, I am happier on the road than I think I've ever been happier, or ever felt. I think it let me reverse. One, as I talk to you with my knife, I am living closer to how I personally love being outdoors, being, in beautiful places, obviously cooler temperatures. I'm able to give Phoenix the life that I've always wanted to give him. So we are better balanced energy-wise. I also think I'm living closer to how we're meant to live as humans. Naturally, I'm getting 20 to 30,000 steps a day. I move more. I get more sun. I see beautiful things. I'm able to decompress from daily life easier because, I'm able to go for walks after work, play fetch with fiends and stuffs. And I feel like it's just closer to how we're supposed to be. And so I'm just naturally happier. People who, maybe at work who didn't exactly know what I was doing commented that I seemed happier, even amidst like the most chaotic program that I've ever rolled out. And I really highly contribute that to that minimalist lifestyle, having less things, having less work to maintain a large house, being able to reset in nature every day. I'm just happier than I have ever been. And obviously some of that does have to do with being in Colorado and being in Silverton, but I think I could be anywhere. Like right now I'm just in a random dirt road of Flagstaff, and I am calm and happy, and I'm able to just live the life that I want to live. So emotionally, mentally, I am much happier. I am much better balanced. I'm able to manage my emotions better. I am able to manage my stress better. I'm just happy, for lack of better words. Now, how does that translate for Fiends? Fiends is thriving. He is happier than I think he's ever been in his entire life as well. His energy is very, very, very balanced. He has settled in, like the camper is home. We sleep like absolute kings and queens in there, and he puts himself to bed every day at 7 because I think he's just naturally, he's had enough activity. He's had enough stimuli during the day. I got the one random comment about living in a teardrop about I shouldn't have a dog, and like I kind of laughed. It didn't even impact me, didn't affect me at all, because like literally in that reel he got 5 walks in one day. Like, yeah, sorry, no. I literally use the word literally a lot, but I also have completely shaped my life around Phoenix, around him. So no, he's healthier, he's fitter, he is just killing the hikes and the runs and the climbs, and he's eating a ton. Actually, like coming back, we've both struggled like reducing our intake because we just got used to being able to eat so much because of our activity levels. But even with cancer and even with his PPDH, like he is so fit. And I think I'm giving him the life he always wanted and always desired. And like, he's living closer to his life that he should also be living. You know, we go to the den at night. Like, he puts himself in his den at night, but the rest of the day, he has the world to explore and smell and sniff. So mentally, this was the best thing that I've ever done for me or Phoenix. Now, I'd be definitely lying if I didn't say there weren't different stressors. Like, there are stressors. Like, when I had the marmot for 3 days, I felt very alone. But my motto whilst in the teardrop has been, it is what it is. I will figure it out. Everything is figure outable. It is what it is. And I've just been able to relax and chill into that. I know that I will figure it out. I know that I can do it. And I know that if one day is bad, the next day is going to be beautiful. And I think I've actually become stronger because of having this mentality of, it is what it is. I will figure it out. I know I will overcome it. I will be strong enough. I will be capable enough. And there's something to be said about the absolute confidence booster that living in a teardrop by yourself with just your dog is for you. Like, it is wild, the person I am today versus the person I was 3 months ago. Brings us to the end. Future plans. There are some, I can tell you that, but I'm not gonna tell you what they are. Mainly because they're not fully formed, fully thought, but my life has been absolutely changed on the road and I want more of it. So there's your one spoiler alert you're getting. Playing fetch with Fiends, that after day fetch. So yeah, there you go. That's all I'm gonna say, that there are plans, there's excitement, but it's gonna be a little while. We're gonna continue to explore in the drop. We're gonna continue to do those things. I have a couple non-drop related trips coming up, and we'll just continue to explore. Like this week, you're gonna be getting a video of, did my second week off grid go better? Did it? I don't know. I don't know. You will see. But that is, for now, we're gonna keep the long-term plans under wraps. And we're just gonna continue enjoying the teardrop and all its glory, because we love this thing. So we have had, just wait, the most amazing summer, the most amazing memories. Those are just some of our moments, and I feel so blessed and so thankful for all of you that joined us on this journey, because what a journey it has been. We have loved every second of it. Feels bittersweet to be heading back home after this week, but like I mentioned in the video, or in the intro, this is a couple weeks after the trip has ended, and let me tell you, we are jonesing for the open road again. So that is it for this video. I know it's a little bit different of a video, but I hope I answered your questions. I hope I gave you enough information that if you are interested in teardrop life, maybe this inspired you, maybe this helped you with your setup. That's all we can hope for. But we will see you guys on the next adventure, wherever the road takes us.